biografía de Mark. Mark ha diseñado sistemas de iluminación para una amplia gama de aplicaciones a nivel residencial, comercial, el nivel de salud, inclusive plantas de energía convencionales y hasta nucleares. Como les comenté, ha trabajado en muchas partes del mundo, ha trabajado en la educación en muchas partes del mundo. Es miembro también de un think tank, una reunión de mentes que es Lightwise. Desde ahí están todo el tiempo analizando, están todo el tiempo comunicándose, viendo qué tendencias están cambiando en el mercado. Mark fue miembro de la junta directiva de la IES y es miembro actualmente de múltiples comités a nivel de la IES, de la SRAE, de la IEEE, ISO y ANSI. Actualmente es columnista de la revista LD+A, LD+8, es el Lighting Design and Application Magazine, que es la revista de la IES que nos llega a los miembros. Escribe sobre los cambios en nuestra industria y también tiene un podcast que es Forces of Change, donde habla de tendencias.
Forces of Change, that is related to tendencies and lightning technologies. He has worked as the president of the committee of the NEMA, and he works for the IES and
el National Lighting Bureau. Dentro de sus múltiples certificaciones, pues tiene es Lighting Certified. También es un profesional certificado en eficiencia de iluminación, el CLEP. También está certificado en Management, Lighting Management Certified, es el CLMC. También es profesional acreditado LEED. También tiene una certificación en edificios de alto rendimiento HVDP. Dirigió los centros educativos de Cooper y Hubble Lighting. Fue director también de Relaciones en Gobierno e Industria de OSRAM y Silvania. Cuando estuvo a cargo de OSRAM, tuvo cierto contacto con nuestros países latinoamericanos. Y actualmente Mark es el director de las Relaciones Industriales de la IES. Entonces, bueno, es el personaje indicado para que nos ayude a ver, a vislumbrar qué es lo que se viene para el futuro de la iluminación. Y por eso se titula esta charla, The Future of Lighting Industry. Dear Mark, it is a pleasure to have you here and welcome to Colombia.
Mark, es un placer tenerlo acá y bienvenido a Colombia. Gracias por esa introducción o presentación y gracias a todas las personas que están involucradas en América por la invitación a presentar. Bueno, vamos a poner la presentación en este momento. Muy bien. Ahora, ¿la presentación funciona? Está funcionando muy bien. Quisiera agradecer a cada uno de ustedes por ayudarnos a él y a
this presentation this evening. I have a topic here of the future of the lighting industry. It's obviously US centric, but I believe that there is a lot in this presentation that will be insightful and valuable and really transcends borders. So let's get started. It's probably worth noting that there really isn't a global lighting industry at this point. There's been talk of it for decades, but only parts of our industry have really globalized. Their metrics are, for the most part, global. Some of the products are lamps and sources. But when it comes to luminaires and fixtures, most of the companies that make those tend to only produce products for other countries that they have some unique competitive advantage to. If you look at a catalog from a European lighting company, for example, they may bring in a small percentage of those into other countries because they've figured out how to make them for less money, or they have some unique design advantage. But for the most part, lighting manufacturers still tend to be primarily regional. Exception to that are commodity products coming from the low-cost labor markets. So we've got a lot to go through here. And let me get started. I am starting this off with some content from the IES Progress Report. This report is the only one that I know of in the world that monitors advancements, significant advancements to the art and science of lighting every year and reports on them annually. And it's an interesting report in that it's all new products that have come out in the previous year, and a committee determines whether or not they are significant advancements to the art and science of lighting. But since they're new products coming out, they don't reflect what's already in the marketplace. They reflect the changes in the marketplace. I've been on this committee was formed in 1911, 5 years after the IES was formed, and I've been on this committee for 30 years, looking at the new products as they come out. And I perform an analysis for the committee every year, and we have just had our conference recently, and I have the most current analysis here that I'd like to share with you right now. What was particularly telling to me is I went back through 30 years of reports, and more submissions were not accepted into the report this year than at any previous time. So in addition to talking about what's accepted, I'd like to point out that there's a trend in the last 6 years of not accepting a significant amount of these. Over half were not accepted into the report because they weren't deemed by the committee to be significant advancements to the art and science of lighting. The people who presented them, the submitters, they felt that these were significant, of course, but the committee deemed that there were other products already in the marketplace that were similar enough that this just wasn't significant. And the reason for the last 6 years that there have been more rejections is because we are a maturing market. The lighting industry had a solid state lighting revolution, if you will, over the last 15 years. It was 2005 that the first viable architectural light became available. And so for 15 years, we've had this dramatic shift. And now almost all of the products have LED equivalents, be they sources or fixtures. So we aren't seeing any more first times, if you will. No first LED sports lighter, no first LED automotive dealership light. Those have already been done. So to see advancements now, it's got to be more than just LED. There has to be something else to it. So digging a little deeper, we'll look at the fixtures and controls, and you'll see that they are falling off also. Now, for luminaires, that's to be expected because it's a maturing market and there's less innovation now because most of the easy-to-do work for innovation has been done. But look at the controls. There was only one control accepted into the report this year. That's the lowest ever. And yet in our industry, there's a tremendous emphasis on connected lighting, smart lighting, control systems that control numerous devices in homes and cities and businesses, rather than just a standalone device like lighting has been in the past. So there's a lot of innovation going on, but it's not coming from the established lighting companies. And that's part of the story that we have here. So in the sources that were accepted, there were 5 LED replacement lamps accepted into the report. But what's interesting there is that they were, for the most part, just filling small gaps. 175 watt PS30 shaped HID replacement lamp. There's not a lot of those sold every year, but it's about time that somebody did one in LED. We're just filling small gaps. There is an exception, though. So 400 watt high bay retrofits are getting to be higher and higher lumen packages with less material for heat sinks, and there's some advancement there. But for the most part, we're filling gaps. That's also true of the LED chips and modules. One notation there is that you see an ultraviolet UVC LED with increased efficacy. And that we deemed as significant because those LEDs made to produce UVC tend to be very, very inefficient. They just aren't where they need to be yet. So we wanted to let people know about that advancement. There were 82 products accepted. There were 82 submittals accepted. 69 of those were products, 8 were publications, and 5 were design tools. So that totals 88. A design tool would be like software, for example. So that gives you a little breakdown. And I've given Jorge a copy of this presentation that he can distribute to anyone who asks for it or post if he chooses. What we saw as a reason for acceptance in this year's report was pretty striking. I've heard it said that innovation is fusion. We don't actually create anything. We just put it together in different ways. And that's our innovation. We fuse things together that have never been done before. 70% of the products that were accepted into this report were accepted because they have a combination of features that weren't available previously in that type of fixture. So people are starting to add audio, video, a lot of different types of sensors, solar, for example. Different products are being added to the lighting. And that is part of the stage that we're in this industry. 20% of the products in the report were accepted because they were smaller than that and previous versions of that type of lighting before. That's very significant because that validates that we're in a dematerialization stage. Lighting is now in a sequential process where we are starting to make the products smaller. That comes right after making them cheaper, demonetization. We've done that. That's already occurred. Now we make them smaller. And when we do, it will allow LEDs to be integrated into the electrical infrastructure of buildings and other devices and trades much easier because they'll be smaller and easy to integrate instead of being standalone products as they have been in the past. So some of the things that we saw from this report, energy savings ceases to be a primary market driver because these products have reached a price and performance level that's accepted in the marketplace. And I'll give you an example. This LED replacement lamp here, it costs about 7,000 Colombian pesos. So a little under $2 a piece here. And it has taken what was a 60-watt lamp down to about 54 watts. So it's about a 90% energy savings. That's a great story for financial incentive. It's a great return on investment if you can take this lamp from 60 watts to 6 or 7 watts. But to save another 90% on top of the 6 watts or 7 watts is less than a watt. There's no more financial incentive for making LEDs much more efficient than they are. And again, the market has agreed on the price and performance levels, so they've turned into kind of a commodity product. We talked about only one control product. That really signifies a shift right now in controls to companies that have more integrated solutions than the established lighting manufacturers have. So we're seeing companies like Samsung, for example, moving into the lighting community and offering a number of lighting products. They partnered with 31 lighting companies at Samsung, and they offer those with a number of other devices that you'd find in a home. That's their first focus, is residential. And the lighting can be controlled along with, a dozen other products. It necessitated them bringing lighting into their portfolio. But now they become a lighting company and a competitor to the established lighting companies. Only one luminaire submitted to the report talked about circadian lighting, despite all of the conversation we have and the potential we see for light and health-related lighting products. And there was only one for horticulture, even though there's tremendous gains that can be made to the nutritional content, the aesthetics, the appearance, the density, the time to market for horticultural products with LEDs. They're so wavelength specific. So even though that's the case, and there's still a lot of innovation going on in horticulture, just like light and health, it's not coming from the established lighting companies. It's coming from outside those. We had 3 GUV products accepted into the report, and that's germicidal ultraviolet. We don't actually call it ultraviolet light because it's not light, because you can't see it. Light needs to be visible. So ultraviolet is outside, shorter wavelengths outside of the visible range. So we accepted 3 of them in there. But LEDs were a problem because LEDs aren't efficacious enough yet. They just aren't where the mercury lamps are. There's a tremendous potential for them. Some researchers that I deal with don't think that they'll ever rise to the level that the mercury is at now. I tend to think that they will, but there are well-informed people who believe otherwise, but there's still some work that needs to be done on safety and such things. So there was some hesitancy to accept those into the report. The other thing that stood out was that 30 of the 65 companies submitting products this year were new to the report. It was 46%. That's the highest we've ever had for companies outside of the established lighting companies. Now, many of these were not new companies. Lighting was just new to their product mix. So some conclusions. The stage we're at right now is we're experiencing incremental progress in a maturing market. The innovation is coming from outside the established groups. Energy is not the primary driver. Cost reductions have slowed research and investment. That's a very important part. As the cost on these products drops, there's less money for research and into new products and to innovation. That's particularly true of the low-cost, low-labor markets. They're not doing any research into new products. So that effectively stagnates the industry in terms of innovation when there's no money to innovate. And then the shift to IoT and light and health and horticulture isn't coming from these players. So we've kind of seen this throughout. I've listed some global drivers here that are affecting our industry. The first one was that lighting professionals have survived the revolution, but not without injury. And that's true. Every revolution, people get hurt. And this was a solid state lighting revolution to shift from the old vacuum tube sources to solid state, but people got hurt. Factories closed that made the older products. As the sales fell off on those, there were a lot of people that were left out of work or having to retrain. The traditional sources are disappearing. We'll look at some data on that. And we have made the shift from an electrical to an electronics industry in many ways, but not completely. Electronics industry tends to think exponentially. The lighting industry, because it's part of an old electrical industry, tends to think very linear and not exponentially. We'll look at that a little bit too as we go through this. We did a great job of increasing light source and luminaire efficiencies. back in the year 2000, we were sitting at about 10 to 20 lumens per watt. And now we're up in the 200 lumen per watt range on luminaires. That is a 10-time increase. And that speaks well of our industry's response to the energy crisis. So now we're starting to see, because of the pandemic, for example, a lot of effect on our lighting community that hopefully will be short-term. And we can get back into some of the globalization and some of the research that we need to establish the value of the lighting for health and horticulture. This is a chart that comes from the Department of Energy in the US, and they do this report every couple of years. This one came out last December, so it's the most current report. And it's very telling on the amount of LEDs that are installed. Now, again, this is US-centric, but I think you can make some comparisons here. 35% overall of the lighting fixtures and sources have changed to LED already, 35%. But look at outdoor, 66%. So I'm going to spend the end of this presentation focused a little bit more on the outdoor exterior lighting, because it has led the way through this entire revolution and continues to because of its association with smart cities. So we'll look at that also as we go forward, but I think it's dramatic. What's also dramatic is by 2025, the expectation is that 93% of the exterior lighting will already be LED. So game over, we're done. Unless somebody can come up with a compelling reason for someone to upgrade, like they do with the iPhones. There's got to be a reason for it. Light and health could be the reason. If we can verify the duration, the dosage, the color temperature of lighting for humans and optimum health, people will want that. And they'll be willing to pay for it and change out what they have. But unless we have something like that, and that's the only thing I can see that could do it, then this is pretty much done. Because again, once somebody switches to LEDs, the energy savings are done. It's not a lot from controls, but we'll look at that too. Traditional lamp sales are declining. You can see the numbers, but they're holding their price. So the companies that are still making some of the older products, they're making a good profit on those products now because the prices aren't dropping, but the sales are dropping. There aren't as many being sold. That's different than what we're seeing with LED replacement lamps. Those are declining in sales, and there's a reason for that. This lamp is rated at 15,000 hours, but many of them are rated much longer. And on the box for this, it says that it'll last 13 years. I don't need to replace this once I've done it. So you're going to see a point where they decline, and we're there. The TLEDs, the tubular LEDs, those are also declining, and the pricing is falling faster than the unit sales. But people are tending to buy the fixtures now because they're more efficient than just putting in those lamps. Also, the lamps have been confusing to the marketplace because of the nature of how they handle ballasts. Some of them bypass the ballast, some of them work with a ballast. It's just, you got to get it right, or you're going to have an issue. And then traditional fixture sales, luminaire sales, those continue to decline also. LED luminaires, fairly steady right now, because that's where the market seems to be shifting. Energy consumption. This is a projection out to 2050. And you'll notice on the bottom of most of these slides that I've put in a web address for you. If you want to download this report, it's free, and you certainly can do that. And once again, Jorge has a copy of this presentation that he can share with you if you need that additional information. Or my email address is also at the end of this presentation, and feel free to email me for that. You'll notice that expectations for commercial and residential electricity consumption are expected to decline, but not radically over the next 30 years. So this forecast is 30 years out. Looking deeper into that report, you'll see residential and commercial electricity rated according to other electrical appliances in homes and businesses. And look where lighting has gotten to. In residential, it's about the same amount of energy that people spend doing their laundry or washing their dishes. I don't think it's going to get a lot lower than that. For commercial, it's amazing what's happened. Back in 2005, commercial building, 40% of the electricity was consumed by the lighting. However, that's about 8% now. So again, I think we've done it. 8% is probably about as low as it's going to get. And you can see that that's right in line there underneath ventilation and cooling and refrigeration. It used to be the highest consuming product in a commercial building, and now it's way down on the list. So in that sense, we've done our job. We are seeing a shift in how our electricity is generated, and we're seeing a shift toward renewables. I know in Colombia, you're still about 30% fossil fuels, but the potential for renewables there is extremely high, about 25% renewables according to the latest data I've seen. But your potential is percent. And of course, the US could as well if we had the will to do it, and hopefully that will occur. So you see a shift here also in where the energy is being generated from. So what tends to happen here is once we make the consuming products as efficient as possible, that's the easy fix, then we start to change the source of the power, the generation of the energy. And that's why we're starting to see the shift to renewables right now. And there's a large focus on that. So it's a sequential process. First, you make the consuming appliances as efficient as possible, and then you work on the generation, and that's where we are. So the big change now is to shift toward renewables. That's going to affect a lot of people. And in the United States alone, there's 2.2 million people employed in the energy efficiency sector. And they're going to have to transition to something else when the energy efficiency movement realizes its potential and goals. Here's a projection for the global lighting market. And this came out in July, and it claims to include the impact of COVID-19. Obviously, it can only include the impact up until July. And right now, both of our countries, certainly Colombia and the US, are both rising to higher levels, and we're seeing some spikes. I had a chance to look at what's happening in Colombia, and it looks like you're following a similar course in terms of seeing spikes because people are going indoors more now, and it's communicated more indoors because it's airborne. Up until July, their prediction was that by the end of 2025, we'd have a compound annual growth rate of about 4.5% for lighting. But most people are saying that 2021 at least, some are saying 2022 also, are going to be down years. Some are saying 2022 will be flat. 2023 is when we'll pick up again. But that's all predicated on guesswork because we don't know how this pandemic is going to turn out yet. The smart lighting market is expected to have a compound annual growth rate of about 20%, reaching out until 2026. But of course, there's a slowdown during the pandemic, and then they're expecting it to pick back up again. So we'll see. They mentioned some of the protocols here for connectivity in this report as well: Bluetooth, Zigbee, Wi-Fi, and Dolly. We'll look at those a little too. And in terms of residential or single-family smart homes, the similar report, compound annual growth rate of 19.7. It took a while for people to want and to see the value in smart devices. But thanks to a lot of the voice-activated controls, we're seeing a real uptick in those, because people want to use these voice-activated controls, like the ones from Amazon and Google and Apple. They want to see those control more and more devices in their homes. So changes there as well. Those are fairly positive forecasts, considering that they include the pandemic. The global smart market for residential lighting here, a little bit more on that. They're indicating that in Europe, you see primarily Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. In the US, it's Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and Zigbee for communication protocols. I think Zigbee is, well, we'll talk about why, but Zigbee is poised for additional growth and to be a stronger competitor to Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Bluetooth mesh works very well in short distances and small areas. Wi-Fi has a number of advantages because it does better going through walls and floors. There's reasons why you would use one over the other. It's never going to boil down to one protocol. It's always going to be two or three. And it looks like we've matured to that point too, where a lot of these we don't hear about anymore. There were a number of other communication protocols in the past that just seem to be fading away. So this, I think, gives you a little flavor of where this is headed, at least for residential. The American Institute of Architects, they have what they call a Billings Index. They've done this for decades, and they report on the design service billings amongst the architects, and it's a reflection of the marketplace. They hit a record low in March, so that was early on in the pandemic, but they hit a record low of 33. And the way their billing index works is if it's at 50, you're flat. You're not growing, but you're not shrinking. If you're below 50, there's a decrease in billings and the industry is shrinking. Well, the latest publication of their billings index is August, and it's up to 40, but it's still in a 25% decline from where it would be flat. This is not being felt by a number of our lighting designers and electrical distributors yet. They still have products that they're selling and installing. There's still some design work done, but mostly on projects that they had already begun, not new projects, which is telling us that there's not a lot in the pipeline to keep the market strong. There will be a deeper lull coming based on this information. Now, standards play a role in expanding the market as well. And the Zaga Consortium writes what they call books. And their books are explaining to manufacturers how to create kind of an open source device or connector. And what it does is it increases compatibility of the products. So if a manufacturer puts in something from Book 20, which is a smart interface to allow sensors and communication modules to be attached to a luminaire, if somebody adopts that, then the sensor companies can make a product that fits any Book 20 compatible luminaire. What we see still is a lot of proprietary solutions, companies making things that just work with their products. That's a short-term fix. Long-term, you want some unity in the marketplace, compatibility, interoperability, interchangeability, because that instills confidence in the customers and more people will buy into the products. there's a proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that kind of applies here too. If you want to get it done fast, go proprietary. But if you want to really benefit the entire industry, then you need to work together. We haven't seen a lot of that, but hopefully we will. On the other side of your screen, you'll see the IES Handbooks. We produce a handbook just about every 10 years. And the last one came out in 2010. This year signifies a radical departure from that approach. All of our documents will be in an online lighting library. Of course, you could print them if you wanted to, but because they're in an online lighting library, you can take it with you wherever you go on your phone or your tablet or your computer, and you can make notes in it. You can share it with colleagues, things that you couldn't do with the past versions. It's the most extensive lighting library that I know of on the planet. So this is new, and we are in beta right now. We have people testing this, and I've tested it myself. And there are some companies working with it right now, and we expect to launch in a week or two. We want to make sure all the bugs are out, and we'll have it out in a week or two, and you will have access to this. Now, just to tell you a little bit more about it, it's broken down into 5 different collections. A lighting designer might care about the lighting application standards, so they've been put in one collection. If you worked in a lighting laboratory doing measurements, you'd care about the lighting measurements collection. It may be that you work in a large company and you need all of them. That's fine too. But you can buy one collection or 2 or 5 or whatever. And obviously, if you're an IES member, there's advantages there. But there'll be over 100 approved IES standards and over 5,000 pages, all constantly updated. No waiting anymore. When a committee needs to update it, they'll be able to update it on continuously. So in the IES, I would encourage people to consider membership. We've got members in 65 countries, including Colombia, of course, and over 8,500 members at this point. Now, I've listed some of the trends, the major trends right now that are transforming the lighting industry. The first one we talked about, the focus on energy efficiency, that is fading because LEDs have become so common. The LED market is matured to the point where we have commodity products. Smart homes have really started to be developed and to be embraced by homeowners primarily because of voice-activated voice controls. And smart cities are paving the way for a lot of change. And we'll talk about those at the end of this presentation. Light and health, of course, has the potential to transform our industry, as we've discussed. So does horticultural. And amongst the new players, I mentioned Samsung, so there's an electronics company, but we also have the telecommunication companies, the telephone companies, and the internet companies, and some of the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning companies, the HVAC companies, competing in lighting now too. So they're lighting companies. I encourage people to welcome them into this industry. There shouldn't be any barrier at all. They could bring a lot of investment. The concern I have is that that they understand the need for quality lighting. A simple user of lighting products tends to underestimate how simple and think lighting can be very simple. I've had people say to me, I thought everything I needed to know about lighting was in the aisle of a big store. But that's obviously not the case. There are all kinds of activities that go on behind the scenes, writing the standards and the codes and everything else, and all the technical expertise that goes into it to make it look simple. So people coming into this industry, they don't understand that there's a lot to it that needs to be done to maintain quality levels. And that's something we could help teach those of us in the industry as these new players come in. I'll talk a little about trends for Lifi. Nanotechnology, we discussed a little already. I will spend a moment talking about quantum computing because that's going to be a game changer. And we've talked a little about renewable energy. And I'd be remiss if I didn't put in the trend of SARS-CoV-2 virus causing an increased interest in germicidal ultraviolet, or GUV. So there's one of the electronics companies. There's a screen capture of Samsung's page, their homepage for lighting. And you can see that they're promoting circadian lighting. So they're already understanding the right buzzwords and they're moving in that direction. Verizon is one of our big telecom companies, and they're very active in smart cities. And they have a lighting professional crew. And I've talked to them, and they are lighting professionals working there, and they are working in smart cities and moving into residential markets with lighting products. So that's a big change. They're not the only telecom doing it, but they're probably in the lead at this point. And then the big switch that we had earlier this year in January is Google, Amazon, and Apple all got together. That's a powerful, unity right there, but they all got together to create Connected Home over IP, an open source home communication protocol. And they're working with Zigbee as the backbone to that. So this has a lot of potential to change things for us in the near future as well. When you look at LEDs, these are the top 10 LED manufacturers by sales. So we have the two top ones have been at the top forever, it seems like, Nichia and Osram Opto Semiconductor. Those two remain in the first and second position. We see some changes, though, in the bottom 8, including now having 2 players from China moving into this area and as a manufacturer of the LEDs. So that's significant enough to note. And in looking at the imports of lighting products into Colombia, it looks like, at least as of 2016, which is what I found online, your imports from China were far and away the strongest. And that makes sense because that's the low-cost labor market. So those products are the commodity products, and you'd expect those to be high. U.S. came in second, but distant second to the imports from China. I also had a chance to look at all of the lighting manufacturers in Colombia, at least the ones listed here, and it's impressive. There's a lot of organic product being developed in Colombia as well, so something you should all be proud of. And your involvement in the professional lighting community is recognized as well. And I wish I could be there for the Lighting and Electricity Fair in December. I don't think it'll actually happen live. There's my projection right now. I think it'll be a virtual event, but even if it doesn't, you'll probably have it again in the future. We had to cancel our major event, Light Fair, this year, and we've still got it scheduled for May of next year, but many people doubt that that's going to happen either. I mentioned Lifi earlier, so that has a lot of momentum right now. We actually have an editor of a website called Edison Report, which some of you may be familiar with. He has started a Lifi website as well, just on Lifi news and things that are happening in this field, which gives you an idea of how much momentum it has. The record for speed for lighting, LEDs, carrying the data signals through buildings, that record for speed is 5 gigabits per second, 5.1. And that is fast. And if you think about the way it's working, most rooms have a mesh of light fixtures that can communicate this and share that signal to move it and distribute it through a room evenly, so you won't have all the dead spots that we have with smartphones and things like that. So this speed is good. And we have 5G coming in, a number of major cities have it already, of course. But even with 5G, with all the devices that are predicted to be internet connected in the near future, 5G is not going to be able to handle them all. And what it can do is offload the data to Lifi that then can distribute it throughout the building, and it doesn't strain the 5G network. So this has a lot of potential. The other big plus with Lifi is no one's figured out how to hack light waves yet. So encryption hasn't been an issue. Cybersecurity has not been an issue with Lifi. I'm not saying somebody can't figure it out, but at this point, it's looking safe, and not much else is looking safe for cybersecurity. There's also the potential for laser, again, lighting, to increase the speed of Lifi 10 times. That's the estimate. That sounds like a pretty rough estimate to me, 10 times. But even if it's 5 times, it's still a ways off. We're probably looking at a decade till laser becomes viable. So first we'll see the Lifi. That's already impressive. Then we'll see down the road that there's ways to improve on that. Apple actually has a patent on Lifi for their iPhones. I don't believe they've put it in any yet, but they have the patent, so they are anticipating it. If you aren't familiar with quantum computing, I suggest you look it up. It is going to change the nature of our lives. The current state of it is fairly young. We're looking at 32 qubit. That's how we talk about quantum computers in terms of their speed is qubits. But in terms of qubits, we're at about 32 in some of these quantum computers right now, with the potential to go to 1,000. Well, even at the lower early stages, Google's Sycamore quantum computer, that's the name they have for their Sycamore quantum computer, it performed a task in 200 seconds, so just a little over 3 minutes, that it would have taken the world's biggest supercomputer to take 10,000 years to complete. 10,000 years versus 3.5 minutes. Now you can imagine what that does to cybersecurity encryption. That just destroys it. Your password can be run a number of times by these quantum computers so quickly that it can break encryption very easily. So there's companies working on that. I was at MIT last year, spent time with their researchers, and this is a challenge that they're working on now, is how do we make this encryption work for quantum computers? And it's going to be tough, but there are companies focused on that. Augmented and virtual reality, the augmented reality is what I'd focus on here. Virtual reality is fun. I enjoy it. I think it's really an interesting tool. There are some applications in lighting even. Some companies are starting to use it to help demonstrate what their products would look like in a space and in 360 degrees. But augmented reality is the one that I think will be the big change. I was at an Optical Society of America conference, and they, just before the pandemic, obviously, and they said that these smartphones are going away. That they're just a stepping stone to smart glasses. With smart glasses, you no longer have to have a separate device. You don't have to carry this around in your pocket or your purse. And you don't have to look down at it while you're driving, hopefully not, and while you're walking down the street or whatever. With the glasses, you're just looking out of the glasses, but they're also enabled for voice activation. So you can control lighting with them already. And one pair that I was wearing is from a company called Vuzix. They're out of the UK. I was watching a video in the lower right-hand corner of the glasses while I was talking to 2 technicians from Vuzix, and they couldn't see that I was watching the video at all. So it was internet connected. And the internet connection could be to social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and it could have facial recognition so that somebody walking toward you, you would know something about them before they even arrived. there will be a lot of advantages to the early adopters of this. And the folks that I talked to from Microsoft and Google, two of them at least, had already given up their smartphones. They'd completely transitioned already to smart glasses, and they say all the apps work and they can do everything with the glasses, and they look fairly normal now. They're almost normal, not quite, but almost. Now, I'm going to guess that many of you have not heard of parallel reality yet. So we just discussed augmented and virtual reality. This is parallel reality. And this comes from a group called Misapplied Sciences. And I put their web address there if you want to know more. They have made displays that are personalized. And what they were going to roll out in June in Detroit Metro Airport were airport signs using parallel reality. So when I walk up to one of the signs that would typically tell me where all the planes are boarding or what time and what gate, it's going to be a personalized message on that screen. So that screen is going to say, "Hello, Mark. We see that you're going to Bogota this afternoon. Your gate is gate 4. It leaves at such and such a time, and the weather in Bogota is such and such." And it would be just for me. Now, the person standing next to me would see an entirely different personal message related to them, and up to 100 people can view the same screen and each get a personalized message. And this is done with LEDs. It's done with red, green, and blue LED lights. I talked to the founder and the chief technical officer, and I had a chance to work with their demos. And what they do is they have a camera, a very low resolution camera. They were careful to specify that. They call it a globular image. It takes an image of you when you check in at the airport. And when you approach any of the screens, it matches that globular image to your check-in point, so it knows who you are, and it aims, because it knows where you're standing, it aims the LEDs at you. Now, when I was trying this out, I left where I was standing to stand behind a woman next to me, and I could see her personalized message too, but I couldn't see it until I walked behind her and looked over her shoulder. So that's how it works. And it won't be limited to airports. Our screens are going to give us personalized messages. And it doesn't stop with the visual. We're going to get personalized messages through audio. And of course, it's done with light too, because light's amazing. So here we see laser personalized messages. Right now, they can do this a few meters away, but this is going to be something that could be done from a much longer distance, much farther away. And the initial application will be super targeted advertising. So you could go in a grocery store and you're trying to pick out cookies, and you're going to hear in your ear, "There's a sale today on, whatever." And you're going to get targeted, individual, personalized advertising. But you'd also be able to send messages to people in a crowd or on a stage, whatever, that is just something they can hear and no one around them can hear it. And that's coming as well. So our next decade, complexity is going to force more specialization. System integrators, we're going to need a lot of those. Lighting designers are going to need to work with new companies. Energy efficiency workers are going to need to transition. Large companies are coming into the lighting field because they are system integrators, and they've done it better than the established companies have in many cases. And lighting is going to get smaller, and the impact on life, human life particularly, but also plants, is going to transform our buildings as we move forward, particularly with vertical farming and things. Now, I put a few resources in here. There's a reference here to Sharpen the Saw. That comes from a Stephen Covey book. He talks about you can work all day long with a dull saw, and you're working really hard, but the saw is dull, so you don't get anywhere. So our brains are like that too. We have to sharpen them. So here's a web address on the bottom of this screen for free downloads of achieving zero energy documents. These are design guides, advanced design guides. The first two, and I'm on the steering committee for this group, but the first two were for offices and schools. And the next one will be published within the next month on multifamily buildings, and then we're going to do retrofits. But all how to achieve zero energy, lighting is a part of it, but it's the whole building to achieve zero energy in these particular applications. There's also a lot of educational content on the IES website. If you're interested in any of that, we have podcasts and webinars and all of that available. Some of it is member only, and some of it is wide open. The resources for germicidal ultraviolet are available for anyone. And we have tremendous webinars and reports there that you can download, and you don't have to be a member to get those. I've put the address there as well. And I found out today that we have 4 more documents on ultraviolet that are in draft stage now. So that means that then they go out for public review. That takes a few months, and then they'll be released. But they're already done in draft form, 4 more on ultraviolet. So you can see that that's changing. Now let's look a little at outdoor lighting, and let's take it out to 2040. We're going to go 20 years out with these next few slides. Efficiency, well, we've done that well. I mean, talked about it already. That's the chart. And again, you can have a copy of it. What we didn't do well in the lighting industry is this, uplight. That's all wasted energy that you're looking at right there. It lights the bottoms of birds and airplanes, but it doesn't do anything valuable. That's a shame. But we didn't design our fixtures early on to prevent this. And now that is changing. And the IES is aligned with a lot of groups, Park Services and International Dark Sky Association, and we've just got a lot going on. The Well Building Group, we're working with all of them. We have MOUs with all of them to try and make all of this better. Smart cities are the test bed for what's happening in lighting, particularly with interconnectivity of devices. So we see a lot of progress moving on in the smart city arena. Renewables, we've talked about already, but here's a little data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. They forecast that 2020 will be the fastest growing source of energy will be renewables. So the fastest growing. So we're not building more of the fossil fuel plants. It's emphasis on renewables from here on in. That means we can get rid of a lot of these things, which will be great when it happens. And you obviously have a lot of this going on there already, with 25% being wind and solar and geothermal. Hydro is not considered entirely renewable because you still have to have generating plants and things for it. Exterior lighting has gotten a lot of bad press, particularly the cooler color temperatures. We've seen a shift in the U.S. Of a lot of people demanding warmer color temperatures outside because they think in some way the blue will hurt them. In fact, and when it comes to outdoor lighting, the dosage is so small because we're looking at 5 lux outside. It may vary some, but still very low levels compared to what you'd have inside at night. If you walk in a retail store, you go into a stadium, you go into your kitchen. And you may see 500 lux. And we're exposed to that at night too. And there's a lot more blue content. The duration of time spent outdoors in parking lots and roadways tends to be pretty small too. So the dosage is small, the duration is small compared to what we experience elsewhere in the evening. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to focus on the exterior lighting. It's an important issue, but the dosage is so small and the duration is so short that researchers say that it really doesn't have a negative effect. But we have a lot of internet experts, and so we fight that battle often. This is a report that you also can download at no charge from Pacific Northwest Laboratories. They did this work for the Department of Energy on how much money could be saved in commercial buildings. Energy could be saved, so equate that to money, by controls. And they looked at 34 different control measures. They found that exterior lighting had the potential to save an additional 0.9%, less than 1%. So not great. So controls aren't going to be a return on investment story. They may be necessary. They may be very useful. There are going to be some applications that certainly can save more money with motion sensing in parking lots and things. But overall, they're saying 0.9%, pretty low. You see a book here on the right called Bold. It never talks about lighting, but it talks about all of the different types of products that do go digital, like music and books and other things. And what then the 6 steps that they have to go through sequentially. So the first step is they go digital, and then they can be swapped, in a digitized format simply and cheaply. And that's the first step, right? And much of our industry is digital now. Then it goes into a hype cycle or a deception cycle where all the promises of what we're going to ultimately have aren't realized. Think of the first LED lights. They were huge, they were ugly, they were blue. They weren't very, the efficacy was really low. They weren't very efficacious. They were awful. First computers were the same way. We heard that computers were going to, come and be a part of our lives. But then the first things we got were these plastic boxes that played games. And the product didn't live up to the hype. So only early adopters jumped in. But when the product developed to where it was valuable to people, then you see that their industry gets disrupted. We've experienced that already. Then it goes into, after the disruption, people start buying it, economies of scale, it goes into demonetization. Then it gets into cost reductions. And we've seen that, certainly with LEDs. But then it goes to dematerialization, which we talked about already. That's getting smaller and smaller until ultimately it disappears, like music or movies. They can stream. You don't need to buy a DVD or a CD. Or in the case of lighting, it's just going to get extremely small, nanotechnology. And then democratization is when it becomes so cheap and plentiful and ubiquitous that anybody can have it and everybody will. That's the final goal and step. So watch these 8 technologies and how they're converging with lighting. This is an explosion of convergence right now, because these 8 that I've identified here, they're all in exponential growth mode. They're all in some type of doubling phase right now. And lighting plays in all of them, some more than others, but in all of them. And they're converging. And as a result, there will be a lot of unexpected convergent consequences as we put all of these together. But this is what lighting is merging with right now. It's easy to predict where we're headed. Trajectory is very easy. That's the chart you see on the left. That's trajectory. What lighting changes will be occurring? All you got to do is say, here's where we were 20 years ago, 15, 10, put a pin in place, and here's where we are now, and you can draw a line. And if you're informed, you can talk about where we're headed. The speed, though, there's too many variables, and those last 8 different exponential technologies are variables. The speed is very hard to predict, and that's where people get embarrassed and get in trouble, like these people that like Heinrich Hertz, who thought radio waves ultimately be of no use whatsoever, even after he discovered them. Here's somebody who said video games were a passing fad, right? Not good. I heard one analytical company hired by AT&T told him the smartphones were just a phase, right? It was a long phase. Computers in the future are going to weigh no more than 1.5 tons. Well, yeah, clearly. And my favorite is the one from the oil company. They're bragging that every day they supply enough energy to melt 7 million tons of glacier. They didn't know, obviously, how that'd sound in the future. So let's look at 2025, 5 years out. It's going to be a new model lighting ordinance. It's something the IES is working with the Dark Sky Group on. Energy standards shift their emphasis to embodied and operational carbon. That shift is going on right now. I'm on 17 different committees, including a number of committees with ASHRAE, and we're seeing this shift now. Advancements in light and health, we'll see that. Solar and wind cost could drop to 1 cent a kilowatt hour in the next 5 years. 1 cent a kilowatt hour. At that point, energy efficiency just isn't that important if energy is that cheap. And we're going to see a lot more of the warmer color temperatures, unfortunately, because we have a lot of misinformed people. Look at this for light and health. A colleague of mine, someone I respect very much, Dr. Douglas Steele, he's a neuroscientist. He did the math on this, and he said if you make a product that sells, for $1 and it's worth about $1, you're going to get $1. But if you make a claim about it that it's going to help, a non-medical claim, some unregulated claim, like it may help you sleep better, right? It may help you feel better. It will help you wake up faster. You make those kind of claims, you could sell it for $3. It's the same cost to make it. And if you can get that to be a regulated claim, like here would be the Food and Drug Administration and a prescription, for example, then you get $10 for the same product. That's a lot of financial incentive for light and health. And so that is going to happen. One other thing I want to point out is that wind gusts are starting to change exterior lighting. And that's because of climate change that we're starting to see higher sustained wind gusts. I went through all of the tropical cyclone basins. There's 7. And I found that in the past 5 years, 6 of those had hit record wind speeds. And you look at these wind speeds, 185 miles an hour in 2019. We don't make our exterior poles to hold up to 185 miles an hour. I've designed a lot of lighting projects, and most of them are in that 100, 125 miles per hour range, which any of these hurricanes would have blown down. So, and they're all over the planet. So it's not just one place. Here's an article from Scientific American, and again, the address is there if you want to look it up. And they're saying that wind speeds were actually declining until about 2010. Then they started increasing, and they've been on a steady increase since. So with wind speeds going up, we're going to have to change the EPA ratings on these poles so that they can handle this. We may as well do it now and not wait. You can say, let's wait and see, but that usually doesn't work out too well. And here's examples of poles that have fallen over in the last year or two and caused problems. Here's one where the pole fell and it hit a lawyer. What are the odds? But very expensive lawsuit for sure. So it's already happening. And a lot of our poles have been up for a long time, so they're weak. 2030, we're 10 years out here. We're going to see those smart glasses replacing the smartphone within the next 10 years. LED market saturation for exterior lighting is done. Kilowatt hour rates have dropped radically 10 years from now. Lighting energy standards have pretty much distilled to just minimums or some aspirational goal like a USGBC LEED goal. And we'll see some parallel reality in place. And that's just 10 years out. Here's 2040. Lighting will become a cafeteria approach product for outdoor products. You won't have lighting poles anymore. You'll have smart poles, and what they will be is a platform for digital products, docking stations for drones on the top, vehicle charging on the bottom, lighting if somebody needs it, all of those different sensors, gunshot detectors, humidity sensors, audio, video, all of that. And lighting is positioned perfectly for that in our poles because they're in a unified, consistent mesh throughout most municipalities. Autonomous vehicles, they don't need lights on the roadways and highways. So that changes the game again. We need them where there's pedestrians, or if you want to light something up, some monument or something, but we're not going to need them for highways. They're autonomous vehicles. And by the way, they won't call them autonomous vehicles when they're the most common vehicle. When they're the primary vehicle, they'll just become vehicles again. They're not going to be autonomous. It's kind of like Internet of Things. It's not the Internet of Things when just about everything's connected to the internet. That term just goes away. Those are transitional terms. And then we shift from the glasses to the internet-enabled contact lenses. Those are already available, or implants, which we'll talk about in a second. And solar paint will reach an acceptable efficiency level so they can paint poles and luminaires, and they'll generate their own electricity. Right now, that's at about 3 to 5% efficient. In the lab, at the National Energy Research Lab, they are at 13.4% efficiency. Products are available. I put a picture of one of the gallon cans there. You can actually paint a surface that will generate solar energy now. It's just not efficient enough yet. Glare will still be a problem. People will still be griping, and hopefully we'll have those flying cars by 2040. hopefully. Implants look inevitable too. Elon Musk of Tesla and SpaceX fame, he believes humans need to merge with machines or they'll become irrelevant in the artificial intelligence age. And he started a company called Neuralink, where they wanted to get approval, but the pandemic slowed it down, to test humans by drilling 4 holes in their heads and inserting thin wires. I wasn't in line for this, by the way, to pass neurons, thought data to an implant behind the ear that'll connect to a computer. You'll be instantly connected to the cloud. And the first people to do this will have a remarkable advantage in the marketplace, and people that don't will be at a disadvantage. Here's some implanted lighting that's actually going on now, or implants that are going on now, beyond just medical use. Here's a company in Wisconsin here that has a small chip that employees volunteered to have put under their skin because they wouldn't need a password for their computer anymore. Doors would open automatically, the ones that they're supposed to get into in their building. The lights would come on at whatever level they predetermined them in the app. It had some advantages, so people put the chip under their skin. Now that other thing, just to the second one from the left, that device is what you see implanted under the skin in the other 2 photographs on the right. And it has 5 LEDs. Each of them is programmable with an app, and you can touch them and make 5 different things happen. So you can control your lights if you want to, or your sprinkler, or your thermostat, or whatever, all from those buttons under the skin. People who do that, who do these implants, they're called grinders, and they have their own community online. If you want to look into that at all. Lastly, we're going to finish up with a few slides here that talk about predictions from Ray Kurzweil. If you aren't familiar with Ray Kurzweil, he's the Chief Technology Officer for Google, but his credibility is pretty well established as a futurist. He invented the flatbed scanner. He invented speech to print. He invented the synthesizer that Stevie Wonder uses, the Moog synthesizer, got a Grammy for it. He did, Kurzweil, not just Stevie Wonder. And he's right 86% of the time over the last 20 years, 86% of the time. So here's what he's claiming out to 2038. And we talked about the 1 cent a kilowatt hour already. He predicted 5G in 2020. He did that 2 years ago. He was right. We've got it in the major cities. Here he's saying in 2026, 8 billion people will be connected at 500 megabits per second or faster. And that is anticipating some population growth, obviously, in the next 6 years, but it's assuming that we'll almost all be interconnected. Google, Facebook, and Elon Musk all are launching satellites to create broadband worldwide that will be fast. So that looks promising. Solar and wind will be 100% of new electricity generation in 8 years from now. These are his predictions. The majority of human professionals in 12 years from now, 2032, will have some type of cortical modification to connect their neocortex to the cloud, like we saw with Elon Musk's Neuralink company. And by 2036, smart cities will be produced at scale, like a template for making a city. They'll be efficient at utilizing solar energy, distributing food, all of those things. They're going to have that worked out by 2036, 16 years from now. And of course, that's important because more people are moving to the cities. And what gets disturbing here is by 2038, he says everyday life is now unrecognizable. And so we don't want to go much farther than 20 years out. I read this recently, and I thought it was really important, if not transformational, in my thought processes. I'd sat down with my brother-in-law, I was 20 some years old, and he said something to me that stuck with me. He said, if you learn to like change and embrace change, you're going to have a great life. But if you fight it, you're going to be fighting all your life. And I thought, well, that makes kind of sense. And then you think about what Darwin said, that the strongest survive. That's how we always quote him. But that's not what he said at all. In fact, it's the opposite of what he said. This is his actual quote. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones that are most responsive to change. Take species out and insert companies, it still fits. People, it fits. It's the ones who can adapt the quickest that are the ones that survive. And the ones that don't adapt the quickest are the ones that are going to be the worse off for it. So I appreciate very much you joining me for this session, and we have a little time, Jorge, I hope, for Q&A.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was a great deal of information right there, and really mind-opening. I think the people are really sending you their questions. So, gracias a todos los que están enviando sus preguntas. Tenemos algunas ya en la sesión de Q&A.
We have some of the questions in the QA session.
To ask them, I'm gonna do it first in Spanish. I wanted to ask first, estas preguntas ya están visibles para todos, o las preguntamos primero en español y luego se las hacemos en inglés a Mark. No sé si alguien me puede ayudar, el profe o Pablo, que me pueda aclarar.
Las preguntas están visibles para nosotros, los panelistas, Jorge.
Okay, bueno. All right, so we are gonna read it first in Spanish, and then I'll translate them to English. Okay, so la primera pregunta es, ¿son confiables los sistemas de medida de variables eléctricas integrados en las luminarias? All right, so this is about measuring the electrical variables, the electrical, how would you say that? You know, the luminaires that have integrated electrical measurements such as distortion, harmonic distortion, power factor, such and such, are they trustable? Can they be trusted? That's the first question.
Yeah. The luminaires that have capabilities to do measurements are an issue right now at the research labs, as well as the energy code and energy standards development. And I'm dealing with them in both of those areas. There is a brand new report that I almost put into the from Pacific Northwest Labs on the luminaires and devices that monitor power consumption. And they found that the residential ones were actually pretty good. But surprisingly, the commercial ones, some of them were horrible. They were off by 2 times, a factor of twice. And to the extent of the other issues in terms of measurement, I don't believe there's a lot of research yet in other areas. The first one they went after was measuring the energy consumption of the devices.
Ok, bueno, interesante respuesta. Los de tipo comercial.
That was an interesting question answered. How
de equipos de iluminación con sistemas fotovoltaicos? Mark, so you spoke a lot about fusion. That was the great innovation these days. How is it happening in terms of the photovoltaic systems, lighting and solar power? How are they integrating?
Yeah, it's a natural integration because they're both DC. There is a lot of activity right now on integrating solar, and a lot of new products that already have solar capabilities. I mentioned solar paint in there. That's coming in the future. But right now, lighting is ideally suited LEDs, DC lighting, is ideally suited for solar. So we will see that continue and expand in the marketplace.
Thanks for that. Las nuevas herramientas de software en iluminación, ¿qué tipo de funcionalidades presentan? So Mark, there were a couple, you mentioned a few innovations in software. So what are their advantages? What are their new functionalities?
Well, an example in software would be AGI 32 software looking at the circadian metrics. So they'd be looking at melanopic lux in terms of EML metrics and looking at CS, the metric developed by the Lighting Research Center, and putting those into the software package. So that's the type of software innovation that we had in front of the Progress Committee, which is what I think you're referring to.
I would like to make my own question about those, Mark. How do you perceive the video game industry, you know, these engines, these game engines as a game changers for software? Are we gonna see those more and more? What's your opinion?
I'm sorry, you're talking about video games, Jorge?
Yes, like the Unreal engine or the Unity engine. They are getting more and more involved in the architectural and lighting design industry. What's your take on those? Do you think they're going to be a game changer for the industry, or that's going to take some time?
I don't know. I'm familiar with an author that does a lot of work with video gaming and really believes that they have a tremendous benefit. But those engines you're talking about, I'm not familiar with what they're doing in lighting, but I would like to be. If you send me some information on that, I'd like that very much.
Yeah, sure. The reason I'm asking that is because 2 years ago, last year, we had in Mexico one speaker from Epic Games, and he was focused on that. But I will send it to you because it's quite interesting what they're doing.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yes, okay. Never mind. La vida útil de las luminarias LED se mantiene superior a las 50,000 horas. ¿Cómo afectaría el mercado de producción y consumo de productos LED? So this is about the life of the LED luminaires, which is now above 50,000 hours. So how is that going to affect the production and the consumption of new products? How is it going to affect the market?
Yeah. Once somebody installs one of those lights at 50,000 hours, assuming that the life rating is accurate, then they're not going to need another one for a very long time. So that obviously is going to have a negative impact on the market unless we come up with a compelling reason for them to upgrade. And our industry has not been very good at that in the past. There's a few examples where we have done it. T8 lamps, electronic ballast, things like that. LEDs were a classic example of people wanting to upgrade because there was a monetary gain. Health gains would be just as impactful. If we come up with an LED that we can validate would be healthier in certain applications, people will demand it and they will change over their lighting. But other than that, Jorge, once it's in, it's in.
Game over, like you said in your presentation.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you, Mark, about those. I had an interesting conversation with a professor. Are we gonna change luminaire for fashion? He was speculating about that. He was telling me, All right, so maybe there's not a reason to change them because of efficiency, because they are broken down or anything like that, but maybe we have a cooler luminaire, or there's a, just like the iPhone that we keep updating, or just like the new clothing, fashion, is that going to happen to luminaires, do you think?
People don't tend to pay for features, they pay for benefits. What's the benefit of this, right? And when it comes to the iPhone, I didn't buy the new one last year or the year before, but this year it had 5G and all the bells and whistles that they've added in the last 2 years. That was enough for me. So yeah, I've got the new one coming. With lighting, fashion has always been a part of it. So aesthetics are important, but if you think about the lighting that is predominant, troffers, for example, they're about as ugly as they get. They're a real estate solution. They're a cheap, economical solution for a builder. And that's the way commodity building has been done. And I don't really see it changing. People that can afford better and want the nicer looking products will pay for them. But commodity products, we've accepted some pretty ugly stuff in the past, and I suspect we will continue to. That's speculation, but I would think so.
Thanks, Mark. Yes, we understand that, like you said, trying to guess the future is humbling, right?
It is. It
is humbling. All right, so next question I'm taking now from the audience. And this is written in English already, so I will translate it in Spanish first. And it's quite it's an interesting question. Carlos Hernández, gracias por esa pregunta. Dice, ¿qué consejo nos daría a un empresario latinoamericano que está trabajando, un empresario que busca una aplicación prometedora de la iluminación? So what advice would you give to a Latin American entrepreneur who is looking forward, who is looking for working on a promising lighting application?
Well, I'm going to assume that by application, they mean a particular type of area of a building, and that kind of application as opposed to a software application. Any idea? Is that what they mean?
Yes, I think that's what they mean, yeah.
Okay. So right now, if I was an entrepreneur anywhere, I'd be looking at getting expertise in a couple of areas. We are going to need, and there's already a shortage of system integrators right now. People who can put together the different protocols and have Bluetooth talk to Wi-Fi, talk to Zigbee, whatever it may be, Dolly, whatever. Somebody who can figure out how to overcome the interoperability issues with lighting products and components. That's going to be very important as we move forward. Zero energy design, that's another one that is going to continue for some time to have a value. Renewables, I've been talking to electrical contractors that specialized in lighting that have added renewables to what they sell, and in some cases given up the lighting, and all they do is renewables now. So understanding how to offer renewable energy on a lighting project would be a critical addition. So those three things look to me to be very viable for now. Nobody can tell you exactly what skill is going to be needed 5 years from now, because this market is shifting quickly. But for now, I think if you had those skills, they would be highly valued and compensated.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Great advice there. Omar Fernando nos pregunta, ¿cuál es el futuro de la iluminación LED de luz blanca, ya que afecta la salud por su espectro en la banda azul? En Europa están implementando la iluminación LED de color ámbar con alto índice de reproducción cromática para evitar este problema. Right, so you spoke a bit about this, but basically Omar is asking, so what's the future of the lighting with cooler LED light? Because it affects because of the blue light hazard, it affects health. So what's going to be the future? It says here, in his opinion, in Europe, they're implementing more and more amber LED lighting with high chromaticity reproduction index to avoid this problem. I guess he's referring mostly to outdoor, for what I...
It sounds like it.
Yeah, so what's your take on
that? Although people are starting to use warmer LEDs inside too. You know, initially, Jorge, we couldn't do that as efficiently because the cooler color temperatures were much more efficient than the warmer ones. But there's not a lot of gap there anymore. It's single-digit gap for the difference in the efficiency of the warmer ones from the cooler ones. And they're all so efficient now that just isn't significant. We have seen a shift in the United States to 3,000 Kelvin for outdoor lighting. A lot of municipalities have adopted that. People have demanded it because they believed a report by the American Medical Association recommending it. That report was not written by lighting professionals. It was to the intentional exclusion of lighting professionals because they had an agenda. It was written by some dark sky advocates, and we're very active with the dark sky group. Their executive director is wonderful, and we have a good relationship, but they have some fringe elements. And that was designed to put warmer lighting in place because they weren't able to do it any other way. So they used the AMA because one of them was involved with the AMA. It's unfortunate, but I think it is probably, that ship has sailed. It's probably not going to go back. The problem is that the cooler color temperatures, while they have no negative effect on health outdoors, unless you're working under exterior lighting for long periods of time, which very few people are, it's not even a concern. But unfortunately, people are going to suffer because safety can be validated to be better because visibility is increased when you increase contrast. That's one of the 4 factors of visibility. Higher, cooler color temperatures increase contrast. People can see better. Stopping distances under cooler color temperatures appear to be better, according to the University of Virginia Virginia Tech's research. There are reasons why the cooler lamps could be better in certain applications, but people think that the blue is going to hurt them, so they want to get rid of it, and they just don't know better.
Okay, let me ask a little bit more about that, Mark, because I find the subject quite interesting. What you said, like they had an agenda and they were trying to implement these warmer temperatures. So we just recently held a workshop, a design workshop with Roger Narboni, with the French lighting designer, and he definitely recommended the warmer temperatures, but because of the birds and because of the especially in parks and in conservation areas, so he was recommending the warmer color temperatures because of that. So are you familiar with that? Is that that goes along the lines of the IES, like it should be really a concern, like the blue LED light component as opposed to a warmer 3000K component. Will that really make a big impact on the wildlife? What's your
Okay,
take?
so I've been working with the National Park Service here. They're very concerned about the wildlife in the national parks. And they've never brought this up. But if you want to talk about warm light versus cool light and birds, we advocate shielding on all of these fixtures. Any light going up from that fixture, it shouldn't, right? So you won't find birds under the poles as a rule being affected by the lighting. So I think shielding is your first line of defense. If warmer color temperature lamps are better for birds, I have not seen that research. I would love to, but I've not seen it. And I don't think our National Park Service has seen it. So I'd like to analyze that research. But for the most part, just get rid of the uplight. That should take care of the bird issue. But people prefer warm lights in some situations, residential communities, they should be able to have them. But on highways, cooler color temperatures have advantages, and people should be able to use those. I think it's very application specific. If indeed there's any negative impact on wildlife, and lighting can, in general, have a negative impact on wildlife, then that should be addressed. I haven't seen it on birds, but it doesn't resonate as true with me because really that's uplight, and we shouldn't have that anyway. Does that make sense?
Yes, so first is shielding, right? We shouldn't be putting the light up there, and then it doesn't really make a huge difference about the color. And besides, before we had mercury light, high pressure, they had a way more blue light component, right?
Yeah.
So we are kind of getting focused on this discussion, but they really have low light emission on the blue.
Well, metal halide had far more blue, right? And was a very common light source. Mercury vapor for sure had even more blue, and it was a very common light source. But even more than that, the sun has more blue. And I think the birds are doing okay under that. We may be disrupting their nocturnal habits, but again, I'd be speculating. I don't know. And that would be light in general, not just color temperature. Because when you look at the sun and you're looking at, 5,000 to 15,000 kelvins, that's a lot of blue. And we evolved under that. So that just doesn't resonate as accurate to me.
Thanks, Mark. Yes, there could be a whole debate about this.
There are debates about this.
Yes. Well, changing subjects, we have two more questions, Mark, and thanks for your time. That's we really appreciate it. Diego Alexander Rodríguez nos pregunta, recientemente Huawei presentó una patente de carga inalámbrica por medio de láser. ¿Sabe usted sobre avances en el campo de la transmisión de potencia mediante la luz? So recently Huawei presented a patent for wireless charging using laser. Are you aware of any breakthroughs in the field of power transmission using light?
Yeah, but they're in the lab. I have not seen it in the marketplace. There are theories right now that you will be able to power devices that would be interplanetary using light. I've got that in one of my other presentations. So yes, there's a tremendous potential there, but I don't know of it in the marketplace. There is some development going on with lasers right now. I'm familiar with that too, but not in terms of any type of power generation. So if Huawei has it, and I'm sorry, I haven't seen it, but I know in the labs it is something they're working on, and it looks very promising right now. But they're talking about being able to use very precise, high-powered lasers for interplanetary travel. So this is well beyond probably what you're referring to.
I think, thanks for that answer. So we have one more from the public. It says,
I see this one.
Oh, you see it in English, yeah.
Yeah, what's next in LED technology, and how is the LED integrated in the development of street lighting? Or how are OLEDs integrated in the development of street lighting? Next in LED technology will be incremental efficiency gains, the small gains until we get to about 250 lumens per watt in 10 years. But there's not a lot of financial incentive for that, so it's going to be small, little bits at a time. But I think the biggest change will be when we can identify wavelengths, dosage and duration for light and health for people, and light and health for plants. Plants are much harder. With people, we have one species. With plants, we have over 160 species, and they're all different. Right now, the emphasis is on cannabis, right? Because that's where the money is. But cannabis responds very differently than tomatoes or spinach, right? But we've seen in the labs, and I've been to the labs where they're doing this research, fantastic results by changing the wavelengths and the dosage and duration of LEDs on plants. And in the future, with the population increases that are anticipated, the increase of people moving into cities, so uptick in vertical farming, those are going to be growth areas for LED, horticulture and light and health. And OLEDs are primarily being sold in the automotive industry right now. There's no application that I know of at all for street lighting. The lifespan of the OLEDs is still low. The price is still high. The efficacy is still much lower than LEDs. So there aren't a lot of advantages to OLED. It's cool. I like it. But it just doesn't have a lot of financial incentive for architectural lighting. For automotive, they'll pay extra for those bells and whistles, things that look really, really good.
Okay, thanks, Mark. I have, if you allow me, I have one more question that had really haunted me, let's say, during this presentation, which is IoT lighting systems. I used to work for a manufacturer, and I was working on the implementation. They are not changing fast enough. We heard in your presentation. Part of it because they are focused very much on proprietary technologies, and with only like 1% savings in the future, having in mind that, I mean, with the energy efficiency not being like a priority in the future, and with the LED adoption, my question is, how are we going to sell those IoT systems? So what should we focus on? What are going to be the virtues? Because we know they are coming. The emerging market report on January from the IES says is the fastest growing trend with 700% increase in the next 6 years. So how do we approach those? What should be our priority or focus navigating the IoT lighting systems?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, Jorge, and I think that's why you said you were struggling with it. It looks to me like the people who are successfully marketing IoT are the electronics companies like Samsung, because they bundle so many devices into a control system that it offers a simplistic advantage. The Amazon, I hesitate to say her name, but Amazon Echoes, those have offered a lot of progress in voice-activated controls that I think have appealed to people and are expanding IoT also because it has made it simple. Initially, the IoT devices or the smart lighting devices that had apps, they didn't make any sense at all, because for you to turn on your phone, either facial recognition, fingerprint, password, whatever, to get past that point, and then to find the app and open the app and then put another password into the app before you could turn the light on, as opposed to walking over and flipping a switch, there was no marketable advantage. So people didn't buy it. If you can bundle it with a lot of other products to simplify people's lives, like voice activation simplifies lives, then I think it becomes much more marketable. And we're, I think, at a pivot point for that right now. The Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas last January featured a lot of IoT devices, mostly focused on the home, which surprised me because you'd think commercial would be the big opportunity, but they see the home as the testing ground, and smart cities. That's where we've seen the devices, right? Home and smart cities. They're going to pave the way to the economy of scale that's going to make it possible for us to begin to market this into more of the commercial applications. But it's a hard sell right now.
Well, Mark, muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much. It's been enlightening, and it's been a great presentation. And I would like to hear from the rest of the from the professors and the panelists. Would you like to add anything else? ¿Les gustaría a los demás participantes en este punto añadir otro comentario, otra pregunta para Mark?
I don't know, Angelica, Jesus. Mark, we want to say thank you for your presentation. It was great.
Welcome.
Give us a good vision about how the lighting is in the next year.